So enemies drop gold, and that's great. One thing that we're actually going to do next week is set up what's called a win condition. And a win condition is essentially the set of tasks or the overall goal of our player that they need in order to win the game. And for this game, our task is going to be collecting a certain amount of gold. That's going to be our main objective here. So what we want to do is we want to place gold and treasure chests and enemies around the world as best as we can, similar to how we decorated our world here, so that the player has something to sail around and search for. So what we want to do before we get into that is in our Techability folder, in our treasure folder here, we actually want to click and drag our treasure chest object that we made earlier. We want to drag that into our assets folder. That's actually going to create a prefab for us that will allow us to just grab that and place it where we need to. We also, as we did in the last step, we want to make sure that our overrides on our gold coins that we made, those are all set up properly. Looks like they are. And we also have already made sure that our skeletons are all working as intended. So it looks like we are good to go there. So what we want to go ahead and do now is, and I'm going to fast forward again like I have, is I'm just going to go and sprinkle some gold and some enemies around the world. An important thing to note before you get started is that we are going to, next week, we're going to pick a specific number that is our target gold. So you want to have that in mind while you do this. Mine's probably going to be, mine's going to be around, say, 10,000, I think. So that means that I need to have enough gold in the world, or enough value in my gold around the world to hit 10,000. So, if my gold coins, if every pile is worth 50, then I need, say, I guess it's 200 gold piles. That's going to be kind of a lot of gold for them to find. So what you can do is, instead of editing the gold pile here in the prefab, or the same thing with our treasure chest, changing the value of the gold of our treasure, what we can do is when we place them somewhere in the environment, let's say I place one here, I'll turn it around using that R key to get the rotation gizmo. So let's say I have some treasure here, and I want to be able to hit a pretty high number, but I don't want every treasure chest to be worth a lot. I can actually just edit this specific treasure chest by selecting it in the hierarchy rather than in the prefab view. So if I select it in the hierarchy and I want this one to be worth, we'll say 250 gold, now that specific chest will be worth 250, but every other chest I drag out of my prefabs folder will not. So the same thing applies to our gold coins as well as our skeletons. We can change skeletons that are already in our world, their value on the enemy inventory script. We can change that individually for each skeleton. So like I said, I'm now going to take that time to go ahead and place some stuff around the world. I'm going to fast forward, but I'll keep the video on so you can take a look and get some ideas for places that you might want to place your gold. Okay, so I'm pretty satisfied with the number of enemies and the amount of gold that I scattered around. But just like when we placed all of our stuff on our islands, we've got a whole lot of loose objects just kind of hanging out in our canvas. So what I'm going to do, or in our hierarchy, excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty object here, create it on my directional light, and then drag it out onto the blue line like we always do. I'm going to make sure I set all these values to 0 except for scale. We want to leave scale at 1. And then using that shift trick and making sure there's no objects we want, like our ship or our pirate or this dock end apparently, in that child object, we're going to use the shift click and select all of those and just drag them under the empty game object. And then I've got some gold coins down here I'm going to do the same with. There we go. And that's just to clear up our hierarchy so we don't have such a messy thing to work with there. And I'm going to call this enemies and treasure. And them all being under the same object won't affect anything as long as there's you don't have like gold parented to a skeleton or something. As long as they're all, on the same level as children, they won't interact with each other at all there. So once you've got your island set up and you're ready to go, you are ready for next week.